Welcome back to the Light and Life podcast, conversations on faith and life in downtown Colorado Springs. I'm your host again, Liza, here with Pastor Tim.
Right here in downtown Colorado Springs.
Hey, hey.
Something's happening downtown.
What?
The Light and Life podcast.
Oh, yeah. This is what's up. And I think
this
is what's up. That's what the hip people say.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So now you're in.
Well, that helps.
That helps. Thank goodness.
Yeah, thank you. Whew.
I still think that we should fight for air horns on this podcast. After Tim says something prophetic, we're like, pew, 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 you know, don't you think?
I thought you were just going to do that with your own voice.
Yeah, well, that works too. I can do that. It's just not as fun. If I had one to just blast, I think someone might think something's wrong.
Like
someone upstairs.
A soundboard where you could hit different sounds. Like,
yeah. The spring noise, just something random. Oh, man. Well, it's crazy. We started this podcast when?
It'll be
has
like
it been a year?
Is it a year and a half?
No. It's been in ideation.
No.
But when did we actually start
in the summertime, didn't we?
Yeah, that's crazy that it's New Year's Eve. This episode will air on New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, we're running at it. We're doing it.
We're doing it.
Yep.
I think back at the first episode, thank you, listeners, for bearing with us and our weird quirks and not knowing
I'm not sure
how
it's gotten any better.
I think we have.
Oh, okay, good.
I think it feels more natural and not like, can I put my arm here?
Yeah.
You know?
Yep. What do I do with my hands?
Yeah, we're learning. We're learning how to position the microphone, how to talk into it, how to make eye contact with you.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I was scared of that.
Okay.
I'm kidding. So what are we talking about today, Tim? We can just dive right in.
Yeah. So our topic today is prodigals, nomads, and exiles.
Mm-hmm.
I had a chance to do like a Zoom meeting with a small group of people with an author named David Kinnaman. He's an author. But he's the president of the Barna research group, which does a whole bunch of surveys on Christianity, on churches, on why people are going to church, why they're not going to church. And a while ago, they did a study on young adults. Mm-hmm. And you've probably heard of the rise of people, they call them the nuns, N-O-N-E-S.
No, I haven't heard of that.
People who, if you ask them, like, what religion are you? Are you Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, or they'd have a category for none. And so So people who are clicking none, it's a lot higher than it used to be. Mm-hmm. And young adults, there's probably anybody in any church would recognize this phenomenon where kids grow up in the church, they're in the kids programs, they're in the youth programs, they go through confirmation, they go to college, and then they kind of step away from the church. And then you wait a while, and a lot of them come back, but some of them don't. So as church leaders, we're always interested in, okay, what's that about? Is that just something that everybody goes through, every generation, from the beginning of time, this sort of breaking out on your own? Or is there something else going on? So we had this time with this author, David Kinnaman. He wrote a book a while ago. He wrote a book called Unchristian about how young adults were losing their faith and walking away from the faith. But he wrote a follow-up book called You Lost Me. You Lost Me.
You Lost Me.
You Lost Me. About young adults giving up on church and rethinking their faith. So it was good. It was a really great talk. I learned a lot. And I thought, I wonder what Liza thinks about these things.
I have a lot of them.
So you have a lot of thoughts.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So we thought we'd just bounce these ideas around. So let's start with... So I'm going to interview you probably. No,
okay.
But
put me on the hot seat.
when you think about, what is up with you young people? That's me.
Not what I was
that's me, like this
say.
Old guy. Just get
kids.
You kids, get off my lawn. Now, when you think about your friends, Christian, non-Christian, but if you think about non-Christian people your age, what are they looking for? What are they searching for? What are they building their life on? That's a pretty big question.
So I define non-Christians personally, like I compartmentalize them in my brain in different ways. And I know we'll get into different ways that Mr. Kinnaman himself, is it Dr. Kinnaman? I don't
Probably it is.
Maybe,
I'm
perhaps.
actually not sure. Yeah.
He goes into, his categories of what happens to young adults. But I think I have a lot of non-Christian friends who would maybe say that they were Christian, but they're just completely disinterested in pursuing the faith. So it's like they believe Jesus, and that's great, but they're just not interested in learning more about him or pursuing a relationship with him. So I kind of say that's, believer, not a follower. And the vast majority of the people I know like that grew up in church.
Would follow that and grew up in church. And so you also come from the South, from Knoxville. So I think in the Bible Belt. Yeah. I spent some time, obviously I grew up here in Colorado Springs, and then in ministry, I started out in New Jersey and then in Virginia. And in New Jersey, and even in where we were in Virginia, it didn't feel like you were supposed to be Christian to be part of the culture. But when we moved to Atlanta, we noticed that the real estate agent, one of the first questions she asked us was, where are you going to go to church? Because that's going to shape like where I drive you around to see houses. So I was like, well, I'm going to be the pastor of this church. But that's like, wow. Like it's assumed that you're going to participate
and you want to be close to it.
Christian life.
In where you live.
And I bet in Knoxville, that's what it's like. I bet there's kind of like, so everybody says I'm Christian, but what is that?
Where do you go?
Yeah, where do you go, or what does it mean?
Yeah, I mean, when I say there's different categories, like Knoxville is, just everyone there, the assumption is you are a Christian or you did grow up at least knowing a timeline.
Yeah, the basics of Christianity.
Yeah, like there might not be any deep theology there, or no one really knows the differences in what they believe or in denominations. They just, and I don't want to overgeneralize, but that it's just the norm to assume someone's Christian unless they told you.
Yeah, unless I'm told you I'm something else. So it's like it's almost like being American. Mm-hmm. Like before I came to a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, I would have called myself a Christian. In fact, I was involved in a church that had Christian in the name and all that, right? Mm-hmm. So
you didn't really know.
But I didn't know Christ. I wasn't walking with Christ. Like you said, a believer, not a follower.
Yeah.
I hadn't given my life to Christ in a personal way. I was doing some Christian behaviors. And I think that's part of the challenge. Like if you do that and then you pop out and you're no longer under your parents' direction, how are you going to look at church? What's the point of, or Christian community, what's the point of being with other believers? I
think in my experience, a lot of those people that started to trickle off and not engage, I was one of them. And I think I told you, I grew up in school where that was my everyday. Yeah. We pray before the announcement started. Yeah. And before the Pledge of Allegiance, and we pray before dismissal. And so it was normal and baked into a routine for me. And my household was, Christmas, Easter type family.
Okay.
But, I started to go to Mass, Catholic Mass, when I went to college to try to restore some order in my life.
Okay.
But I started to trickle out of that too, because I started to view it as a chore and like, no, this is my time of freedom and my time to learn who I am and learn, meet new people. Yep. And I do remember I was on a first date, and I just remember being blown away because I found out that this guy wasn't a Christian, and I just was like, I've never met people like you, Not really, but not that I hadn't met people like them. It was just in high school and below, it was just so easy to assume.
Yeah, that everybody's kind of on the same plane. and now you've met someone that is saying, I'm coming from a different place, and you've got your heart out there to like, I really want to understand you. We're going out on a date, so I want to
right,
like
right.
Like it's not just like, oh, that's interesting. That guy just walked by and he says he's not a Christian. But
it like comes up, and I'm just
you're trying.
I don't even know what to do with that information, which is just not everyone's narrative, even a little bit. But the friends that would kind of trickle off, there are two sides of it. Some were either really burned by their parents and by the way that their parents were helicopter parents and wouldn't let them make decisions on their own, or a lot of it comes out of love, but it was just a bad taste in their mouth of what is church if it's
I want to drive
just
away
to shame
from
someone
this.
from being
free,
make
someone feel
right?
bad
We've talked about the idea of freedom on this, but and then the other side of it is people just didn't. They're not necessarily burned by it. They just didn't continue to like actively try to feed their soul, and it's just so easy to not.
Okay.
It's just so easy. It really is so easy to not give it a thought. And then they come back. The ones that do come back are coming back because they know there's more, and and they're searching for something that they've been missing.
Yeah.
Whereas the people who haven't had it all along are perfectly content, at least seemingly so.
That's and that's.
Am I making sense?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think I mean, faith, following Christ. Have you ever heard that saying, the only thing a good person has to do to let evil win is nothing? Have you ever heard that? So you've got to keep, the sort of like the natural flow is for faith to go cold, for faith to peter out, for your relationship with Christ to go cold. You've got to push against that. Like, you've got to do something. You've got to, you've got to engage in it, practice it, rest in it, test it, explore it, pray through it, or it's going to start to naturally drift away, because all the currents of our world and our life and even our flesh and our inner desires and all of that, it's all pushing in the wrong direction. So you've got to have some energy that's going to say, well, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to stick with Jesus no matter what, and I'm going to grow my faith. But so Kinnaman, with the power of the Barna Research Group, he gathered up thousands, I think, of young adults who had walked away from church, and he asked them, "Tell me about your story." And he asked them a series of questions, and he got all these survey results, and he really breaks it down into three categories. So these are three categories of young adults in their 20s, grew up in the church, at one point would call themselves committed Christians, and now they're not involved in church. Not involved in Christian community. And that's what he wants to ask. Like, why the "you lost me" is, why has the church lost these people? So here are the categories. The first one is, actually, let's talk about nomads first. So what he calls a nomad, he says that 2/5 of Christians go through a nomad season. 2/5. So like, what's that, 40%? So what's yeah, right. What's a nomad? A nomad is this. He says, all right, they still call themselves Christians and they still believe the basics. So it isn't like, I don't believe this. They believe that participation in Christian community is optional, not necessary. And for them, the importance of faith has faded. They can remember a time when their relationship with Jesus was right at the middle, and it was sort of like the center of their decision-making and what was right and wrong. But now it seems to be kind of off to the side, and they can sort of access it, but it's not as central as it once was. But if you ask them, are you mad at the church? Do you hate Christianity? They'd say no. They'd say, no, I'm not angry. I'm not hostile. I'm just kind of wandering away a little bit from it. And they may be trying on other spiritual experiences, other philosophies, other religions, just trying those things on, but they still believe that Christianity is the deal. So would you think that can you picture that person?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
I have people in my mind constantly.
Right now?
Yeah, and I think, I was that.
Okay.
I was that.
You can relate to that.
Yeah. I'm looking at, the ones we're going to talk about, and it was just like.
That's how you'd name that season.
Well, there were times where I was mad at God, but not necessarily the church or a church, which a lot of people's is the reverse of that, where they were really hurt by people within the church.
Yeah.
And so they're like, you follow what God would make you people be this way, right? Like,
if that's what you're like, and you're saying you're trying to act like God, I'm out.
So I fully believed in God, didn't feel super close in terms of relationship, got mad at him, drifted away, then would have like a really spiritual high, and then college hits, and then I was in a decline.
Okay.
But when I came back, it was like, this was the thing that clicked for me, was the relationship that I didn't have. The belief was there. And
you wouldn't like stand up and say, no, Jesus was not the Son of God.
No.
But you didn't have a relationship.
Yeah, it wasn't something that I was actively interested in pursuing or carving time out for or having any kind of deep conversation around, because it just didn't come up.
I think that feeling of like, is it relevant?
Exactly.
Do I need this? Yeah.
Yeah. Why would this come up in conversation?
Like, I've only got so much time. I've only got so much energy. Is this relevant? Is this going to help me? Is this going to be,
And I think it's a time, college is also a time of, like I said, self-discovery and being on your own for the first time. And so that translated to me and to a lot of my friends as who are the kinds of people I want to be around, and who brings me fun and laughter, and who do I want to be from a career standpoint.
Okay.
And so like importance lies in social perceptions, how am I viewed socially and how am I received socially.
Okay.
In achievement and in interest, and trying to have these cool niche interests like
that sort of
music or sports or clubs or,
Yep. Like I found
underwater basket weaving. I don't know.
I found these boots that nobody else found.
Yeah.
Or I found this artist that nobody else found.
And it's like God was just not
interesting in it.
Yeah. And there are some people that it really was for, but they all have different experiences that kind of shaped that.
Yeah.
I'm just.
So I think,
it's just crazy how many of these people
that are
still
right
in
now
that.
In that. And it helps I found it was helpful to just sort of hear them talk a little bit, and like this is in the book. It's helpful but it's helpful just to think about these categories. Those people that that they believe in Christianity. Like they don't come up and say, I don't believe that Jesus was the Son of God or that he died for us or any of that. But it's not central. It's not relevant. It's not going to make it onto the calendar.
Right. Like they don't necessarily have church hurt.
Yeah.
Or anything. It's just
like
they don't think anything poorly of it. They're just not.
And like he says, this can be a season, and almost, so it's 2/5, 40% of Christians go through a season where they would say, during that season, that's how it felt, but something will typically bring them back into a more active, more central relationship with Jesus, a more active fellowship with other believers. So the next category is harder than that. He calls it the prodigals, after the story of the prodigal son who left his father in the home and went out to kind of live life the way he wanted to. And these are those who have left Christianity totally. And actually, people feel like that's what everybody's doing, but that's what's interesting is that a lot of young adults, it isn't that they've left Christianity totally and totally rejected it. This is actually a really small part of the research group. that have said, I'm out, I'm totally out. There are 4 times more nomads, he found, than prodigals. So this is a really small group, but they're hurt. So they'll talk about church hurt, either a bad experience with a church or with a Christian or with Christian leadership. These are people who openly declare their departure from Christianity and vow never to return to the church. I'm not going to do that again. They've made a public statement, I'm out. He found there's usually something hard between them and their parents. They've got some resentment that their parents pushed them into this Christianity thing, and so they're reacting against that. And then what they'll report that they feel like the restraints have finally come off, and now they can try all that stuff out there in the world that they were not allowed to do, not allowed to try because of Christianity holding them back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's prodigals. Know anybody like that?
Yes.
Yes. And their names are? No.
No further comment.
No further comment, Senator. Yeah. That's hard. It's really sad. And, parents pray for and weep for, and just seeing that happen, you hope that also is going to be something that changes, something that turns around. But that's hard. But this is the interesting thing. What he found is that by far the largest bunch, when you're talking about people who grew up Christian and now they're not engaged as young adults in Christian life, the biggest group is this next group, which he calls exiles. And so what he found from them is that they say, yeah, I believe and I want my faith to matter more, but I don't want to be separated from the world. So it feels like, for example, the faith in science. It feels like if I get more engaged in my church and my faith and my Christian life, it feels like I'm walking away from science, or that I'm walking away from what's best about movies and what's best about the artistic culture, what's best about this world that we're living in. It feels like I have to choose between enjoying the good things of the world and being more of a Christian. So that's one thing they feel. And it leaves them like stuck. The second thing is they're skeptical of institutions. What does this church want from me? What is this Christian group trying to do to me? But at the same time, they say, so I'm skeptical of institutions, but I don't want to go through life alone. So they're stuck. Like, I don't want to be unconnected, but I can't trust this institution enough to connect to it.
Yeah.
So that's I think that's pretty insightful. They tend to say, I want to see God moving outside of the walls of the church. Like, I want to find other things than the set pre-prepared maybe things. And then they say they're not disillusioned with tradition, and they're actually frustrated with slick or shallow expressions of the Christian faith. So they're looking for more, don't just spoon feed me this sort of sugary Christianity that you've totally polished up for my benefit. Show me the real thing. Show me the prayers of the saints who were eaten by lions, whatever. Show me like the history, like the real stuff, the grimy stuff, the good, the bad, the ugly, I guess. You know?
Give it to me raw.
Give it to me raw.
Yeah.
And then the last thing he says is they haven't been taught, they haven't been trained, they haven't come to understand how their Christian faith can play into their vocation, their calling, their gifts. Like I'm really good at business. Hey, I'm really good at making a legal argument. I'm really good at art, making movies, making music. And no one has helped them to see how being a Christian can play into that, and they can actually integrate. So all these points, almost all these, you could sense that it was like, I want this, but I don't want it. Like, I long for this, but I also don't trust it. So they're stuck.
It's like this tension.
Yeah.
That they don't know how to break.
How do you break it?
Yeah, and
fix it, Liza.
I've known the exiles are the ones that I know it's the biggest category, so of course it'd be the ones that
a lot of people.
I know a lot in all of these stages, but the "You Lost Me" exile version of young adults are the ones that I most often start to see God moving in a very clear way when they start to tell their story, or once they convert. They were in this phase where they might not have grown up in church, so they weren't exposed to it. They didn't think anything wrong of it, but they also didn't have a really bad experience.
Got no something to get over, a wound.
They don't, right? But they want to stand up for justice and right from wrong, and those people. It's really cool. I know. I think they're like the logical. They try to like zoom out and see all perspectives because they really are just seeking the good. And the ones in that category, I've seen a lot of them find it, or at least start to. And one of my most recent examples of that is a friend of mine who said the one common denominator behind all of the people that he spends time with and enjoys spending time with, and have the same values in terms of honesty and integrity, is their faith. And so from a logic standpoint, he's like, oh, they all have this commonality among them.
Yeah.
I want to learn more about that, and they try to find logic in it, in faith, but they still haven't found that connection point. However, they're still seeking the truth, and slowly they start to find points that make them think and question. And I say this all the time, but I think an important part of faith is acknowledging the possibility of unbelief or disbelief. I think faith is that much more powerful when there is doubt.
Okay.
It is what I'm, in other words.
Testing it and saying, okay, here's my doubt is, or naming those things instead of sort of skirting by them, skating by them, like not paying attention to the things that cause you to doubt. It's better to pay attention to them, name them, talk about them, and then see how your faith gets exercised in that.
But since they're using logic, like those people that are in my brain at least are not generalizing experiences of an individual Christian that they perceive. Like, if I were to be hurt, or if I've heard church hurt stories, I haven't personally been hurt by the church.
Okay.
Think of me as a person saying that. Okay. I haven't been hurt by the church, but I know of someone who's been hurt by the church. That person who's been hurt by the church will try to convince other people that they're hurt by the church too.
Right.
And I would say the people in this exile category are not allowing those generalizations from one person's experience to influence them.
Yeah.
They're seeking it through their own personal findings, if that makes sense. I could be wrong, but this is just my take on it and how I view that.
Well, people are. So if you go back big picture, pull out big picture, we're in a hyper individualistic age and culture. So everybody sees, even religion, they see it as an individual pursuit, and an individual task.
Mm-hmm.
They don't see it as something, a community to join, or a universal truth to explore and find with others.
Mm-hmm.
They see it as a personal task to figure out.
And that's why they're skeptical of institutions or anything that's organized.
Yeah, right.
Because
you're going to get in the way of me. You might get in the way of me figuring it out, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, what this produces is this real loneliness. I mean, loneliness is a big deal.
Yeah.
And so I think it's an interesting, it's a helpful thing to think about these categories. And what I want more and more and more is for us as Christians, for our listeners, to just be praying for these people and thinking about when you're so stuck in between these polarities, like I can't trust this institution, but I also just don't want to be alone.
Mm-hmm.
I want my faith to matter, but I don't want to, walk away from what's good and true and beautiful in the world, or think that if I become closer to Christ, I have to give up on scientific ideas or the scientific method, or and I just how people get stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And just to have mercy, to have compassion, and just be thinking of creative ways that we as a church can help crack some of these nuts, can help just relieve some of the pressure, so that 20-somethings can feel, because the reason why they call them exiles is that they really say, I wish I was at home at church,
mm-hmm.
but I don't feel like I am. I wish I fit in when I went to my church, but I don't feel like I fit in. So just doing whatever we can in mercy with open hearts to say, we're going to break that down. We're going to create a bridge. We're going to create a place for you to discuss what you're feeling is just so important.
Mm-hmm. And finding a place of belonging and acknowledging, I think that's the bravest thing someone in that situation could do, is to walk into a church, because they know in their mind, they don't know, but the narrative in their mind is, I don't belong, but I'm choosing to come here anyway and try to find belonging.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what the church, capital C, not small c, can do a better job of is meeting people where they're at, instead of immediately trying to convince someone of, this is so great.
Right.
We're so glad you're here, and overwhelming people, because we're, of course, glad they're here, but we also don't want to make them feel like an island.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a really tricky thing, because when people are willing to give that a shot, I feel like first impression is so important, or their first experience of it, because they could show up and not like the teaching that day, or not like I had one person tell me they didn't like the money talk, like, why are we always talking about money, and then having to break down, like, this is actually really biblical, and that kind of conversation doesn't go very well when it's the first thing. So
right.
I don't know. Sorry, we're running out of time, and I'm rambling.
We are, but no, that's good. And I love the community that you're a part of, and how you guys are trying to break down some of these questions, like, how do I use my callings and my gifts for the glory of Christ? How do I get to what's real, not to what's slick or shallow or fake? Mm-hmm. How can I have room to express doubt, to share my skepticism, so that there's a possibility to overcome that? My heart is just, I know how hard it is to be lonely. I know how hard it is to be in a stuck place where you can't get to that thing that you really need. And so my heart just breaks for Nomads, Prodigals, and Exiles. And I just hope as a church we can keep pushing towards it and find those bridges, those open doors, which come wrapped in flesh. I mean, it's got to be somebody inviting. It's got to be somebody walking in with you. How hard to walk into anything alone.
Totally.
So just to be open to saying, would you come with me? This is where I find community. This is where I touch base with what's authentic and real. This is how I've figured out how my calling and my gifts help the world and help me and my family and, whatever it is. But just invite someone along. Mm-hmm. Don't sit next to somebody thinking you're fine the way you are. I'm sure you've got it all figured out. Have that open heart that says, how are you doing? Is there anything missing? Because there always is. And just say, would you want to come and explore faith? Would you want to come and explore the Christian community that I'm a part of?
Mm-hmm. That's a beautiful thing. Well, thanks, Tim. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
And that about wraps up this week's show. But if you're enjoying these conversations on faith and life, please leave us a review. We would love to see more reviews so that more people can find us. And if you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment. And you can always send an email to podcasts@firstprescos.org. Did I say that right? Yeah. So email us with your questions or ideas on what we should talk about. And we'll look forward to seeing you in the next episode when we discuss a church that makes disciples. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
All right. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.